The Galactic Defense Academy stood like a shining city of silver towers on the planet Terran. It was the greatest military school in the known systems. Cadets came from more than 100 worlds, each representing their species, culture, and technology. The Academy's goal was simple: train the next generation of defenders, who would protect the galaxy from any threat. Among the many cadets walking across the courtyard that morning was a young woman from a small blue world most had never visited. Her name was Mira. She was Earthborns, the only human in her class. Mira's uniform looked the same as the others, yet something about her seemed different. Her movements were quiet, balanced, and full of purpose. She carried her training bag on one shoulder, her steps light and steady. The other cadets noticed her as she entered the open training field, and a few began to whisper. "Is that the human again?" said a tall cadet with thin silver skin and glowing eyes. "I heard their world is so dangerous that even their animals fight each other for fun." A second cadet laughed. "No wonder they act strange. Maybe she thinks running around in circles makes her stronger." Myra heard the whispers, but she did not stop. She placed her bag on the ground and began her morning warm-up. She stretched her legs, rolled her shoulders, and then dropped to the ground for a set of push-ups. Her breathing was calm and steady. To her, this was normal. On Earth, every soldier learned to rely on their body first, and tools second. But here in the Galactic Academy, everything was done with machines. The cadets trained inside simulations, used gravity assists, and wore suits that enhanced their movements. To them, physical training without technology looked old-fashioned and useless as Mira continued her workout. A small group of cadets gathered nearby. Drav, a broad-shouldered cadet with scaled arms, led them. He belonged to a species known for brute strength. Behind him stood Rena, a quick-footed cadet from a world with triple gravity. And Corin, a tall student with smooth gray skin and sharp hearing. They all looked at Mira with amused smiles. "Look at her," Drav said with a grin. "No equipment, no power assist, just her bare body and sweat." "What kind of training is that?" Rena crossed her arms. "Maybe that is how they train on Earth. I read that their planet is full of storms and wild nature. Maybe she thinks the Academy field is one of those forests." The group laughed, and even a few nearby cadets joined in. Mira said nothing. She finished her push-ups, stood up, and moved on to sprinting drills. Each step hit the ground with a clean rhythm. She focused only on her breathing and the motion of her body. When she ran past the group, Drav called out loudly, "Hey human, why do you train like that? Are you hoping to impress the trainers with your ancient methods?" Mira slowed her pace and stopped. She turned toward them, her expression calm. "I train because I like to be ready," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. Drav smirked. "Ready for what?" "The Academy uses the best simulators in the galaxy. You cannot win battles with running and jumping." Mira picked up her water flask. "Maybe not," she said. "But if the simulator fails or your armor breaks, you still have your body. I prefer mine to be strong." The answer surprised the group. For a moment, they were silent. Then Rena laughed again. "You talk like an old soldier from the history lessons. Maybe humans still believe muscles can beat machines." Ara smiled faintly. "Sometimes yes." The laughter grew louder, but she didn't react. She returned to her training, leaving them to their jokes. A few minutes later, an instructor arrived at the field. Commander Tovin was a tall being with a calm presence and a metallic tone in his voice. He clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "Cadets, line up for your morning drills," he ordered. "Today, we practice endurance and coordination." The cadets quickly formed lines. Mira stood in the second row, still breathing evenly from her earlier exercises. Commander Tovin activated the training drones, which began floating above the field, projecting moving light targets. Each cadet had to follow the pattern of lights, moving quickly and accurately to match the rhythm. It was a test of agility and focus. When the signal sounded, the cadets began moving. Lights flashed in unpredictable sequences. Some cadets stumbled, others hesitated. Mira, however, flowed through the exercise with steady rhythm. Her human reflexes, shaped by real-world experience, helped her adapt faster than the rest. Commander Tovin watched silently. His eyes, bright with electronic lenses, followed every movement. He had trained cadets for years and recognized skill when he saw it. Myra's motion impressed him. She did not rely on speed enhancers or visual aids, yet she stayed consistent through the entire drill. When the exercise ended, he called for rest. "Good work, cadets," he said. "Some of you need more focus. Others show improvement." Drav, catching his breath, glanced at Mira. "You think she is better than us?" He whispered to Rena. "She just got lucky." Rena shrugged. "We will see during the next test." Commander Tovin's voice interrupted them. "Tomorrow, General Rethor will observe your next training round. Prepare your teams carefully. His evaluations are strict." Low murmurs spread through the field. General Rethor was a legend in the academy. He had served in the galactic defense for more than 40 years and commanded respect from every species. His presence always meant something important was coming. As the cadets dispersed, Mira gathered her things. She walked toward the dorm sector, feeling the eyes of others still on her. Whispers followed her, but she ignored them. In her room, the lights were dim and the air cool. She placed her bag beside her bunk and sat down. On the wall above her bed hung a small photo of Earth. It showed mountains, forests, and oceans under a bright blue sky. She stared at it quietly for a while. To her, this image was more than home. It was a reminder of why she was here. Humans had spent centuries learning to survive in difficult conditions. Earth was not the safest planet, but it taught its people to adapt, endure, and think fast. Mira smiled faintly. She remembered her old instructor back on Earth, who used to say, "When the machines stop, your mind and body must keep working." Those words stayed with her every day. The next morning, the atmosphere at the academy was tense. Cadets prepared for the arrival of General Rethor. The training field had been cleared and reset. Rows of drones hovered in standby mode, and several officers lined the edges of the platform. Mira arrived early, as usual. She began light stretching while others chatted nervously. "Do you think the general will talk to us?" Corin asked. Drav shrugged. "He does not waste time with small talk. He just watches and decides who is ready." When the horn sounded, all cadets stood at attention. The general entered the field with slow, steady steps. His uniform was deep gray, decorated with silver markings of his rank. His face showed years of experience and calm authority. Commander Tovin saluted. "General Rethor, the cadets are ready for inspection." The general nodded and walked along the lines. His eyes moved from one cadet to another, observing posture, focus, and confidence. When he reached Mira, he paused for a moment. Their eyes met briefly. "What world are you from, cadet?" He asked. "Earth, sir," she replied. The general nodded again, showing no expression. Then he continued down the line. After the inspection, he turned toward the entire group. His voice was deep but calm. "Tomorrow's simulation will test not only your strength, but also your understanding of survival. Do not depend entirely on your suits or systems. Sometimes the simplest skill can decide who succeeds." Drav whispered under his breath. "Sounds like something that a human would say," Rena smirked. But Mira did not react. The general continued. "I have seen many cadets lose focus because they trust machines more than themselves. Remember this when the time comes. If you face something beyond your plan, you will need more than technology. You will need instinct." He looked at the group for a long moment, then spoke softly, yet every cadet heard him clearly. "Until then, pray your training holds." The words hung in the air. Most cadets took it as a warning of how difficult the next test would be. Some whispered nervously. A few laughed quietly, thinking he was only trying to scare them. Mira, however, understood the tone. It was not a warning of fear, but of truth. The general knew something the others did not. When the session ended, the cadets left in groups, discussing the upcoming test. Drav and his friends mocked the idea again, calling the general's words old-fashioned. They said machines never fail. They said instinct was for primitive worlds. Myra walked past them without a word. Her face was calm, but inside she felt ready. She knew the real test was not about strength or weapons. It was about who could think when everything else failed. That night, as the lights of the academy dimmed, Mira stood by her window looking at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, spinning quietly among millions of suns. She whispered softly to herself, "Let them laugh. Tomorrow they will understand." Morning came bright and cold over the metallic towers of the Galactic Defense Academy. The training field shimmered under the sunlight, and every cadet felt the tension of the day ahead. The air carried the sound of boots, drones, and voices as teams prepared for the most difficult test of their term. General. Rether's words from the day before echoed in their minds. "Pray your training holds." No one understood exactly what he meant, but everyone could feel the weight of it. Mira arrived early again. She wore her standard armor suit, a simple model with no special attachments. Most of the other cadets had upgraded versions, filled with sensors, boosters, and energy fields. They looked like shining soldiers from another age, while she looked plain and grounded. But Mira preferred it that way. She had learned long ago that power did not always come from equipment. It came from the person who wore it. Drav and his group stood nearby, laughing as they checked their gear. Drav's armor glowed faint green, designed for strength. Rena had small boosters on her boots for faster jumps. Corin had enhanced hearing aids inside his helmet to track movement. They looked proud of their technology. Drav looked at Mira and smiled with amusement. "Human, I hope you are ready for the General's test," he said. "This will not be a field run or an old-style drill. You will need more than your push-ups today." Mira looked up from her checklist and answered calmly, "I will be ready," Rena smirked. "You always say that, but this is the Nebula Arena. It changes gravity, light, and sound. It is chaos. How will your Earthborn training help you there?" Mira looked at the shining arena dome in the distance. Its surface reflected the morning light like a giant mirror. "We will see," she said quietly. Soon the academy sirens called everyone to assemble. Hundreds of cadets formed rows, their armor shining under the twin suns of Terran. Officers stood on the raised platform, and the academy banner fluttered behind them. Commander Tovin stepped forward. "Cadets," he said, his voice loud and steady. "Today you will enter the Nebula Arena. This test is designed to measure your ability to survive, adapt, and complete objectives under extreme conditions. The arena will simulate an unstable environment. Systems may fail. Communication may break. You must rely on your training and your team." The cadets nodded, their faces serious. Then General Rethor appeared. The crowd fell silent immediately. He stood tall, his gray uniform spotless, his eyes sharp and thoughtful. He did not raise his voice, yet everyone could hear him clearly. "This is not a battle," he said. "It is a test of who you are when control is lost. The machines you love may stop working. The ground under you may change. The air may disappear for moments. But remember this, in the end, it is not your armor that saves you. It is your mind and your will." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the rows of cadets. When his eyes reached Mira, he gave a small nod. Only she seemed to notice it. "You will be divided into groups of 6, he continued. "Your goal is simple. Reach the central beacon inside the Nebula Arena. It will test your endurance, teamwork, and discipline. There will be obstacles. Some visible, some hidden. You will have 6 hours. Do not waste a second." He took a step back, then spoke one more time in that low, calm voice that carried power even without volume. "And as I said before, pray your training holds." Mira stood straight, her heart steady. She knew those words meant something deeper. They were not just a warning. They were advice. When the announcement ended, the cadets marched toward the locker bay where they were assigned to their teams. Mira was placed in Group 9, the same team as Drav, Rena, and Corin. The others in the group were Yarrow, a quiet cadet from a water planet, and Lynn, a small and clever cadet from a moon colony known for engineering. Dav groaned when he saw the list. We are with the human. Corin shrugged. At least she runs fast. Maybe she can carry the supplies. Mira ignored the comments. She was focused on preparing her pack. The suit she wore had no advanced systems. So she added a small utility belt with simple tools, a rope, a scanner, a flashlight, and a manual compass. These items looked outdated next to the others' holographic gear, but Mira trusted them. As they entered the preparation chamber, Rena looked at her with a half-smile. Why do you always carry those old things? We have digital maps and signal trackers, because these don't break when systems crash, Mira replied. The chamber lights dimmed. A calm, mechanical voice spoke from the speakers. Simulation loading. Group 9, prepare for transfer. The floor beneath them began to hum softly. A bright light surrounded the group, and in an instant, they were gone from the chamber. They appeared inside the nebula arena. The world around them was breathtaking and strange. Thick purple mist filled the air, glowing faintly like living smoke. The ground was uneven, shifting slightly underfoot as if it breathed. Strange light patterns floated through the mist, casting long shadows. The sound of wind echoed, though there was no clear source. Drav raised his wrist console. Map online, he said. But before he could scan, the screen blinked and went dark. What, my system just crashed?
Ow.
Rena checked hers. Mine too. Gravity readings are unstable. Corin tapped his helmet. No signal from command. Communication is blocked. Mira looked around calmly. The general warned us, we cannot rely on the systems. We must move as a team. Drav frowned. How do we move without a map? We could walk in circles for hours. Mira pointed toward a faint glow in the far distance. It shimmered like a star within the fog. That should be the beacon. We head toward it, slowly and carefully. Keep your eyes open and mark your path. The others hesitated, then agreed. Myra led the way. The ground was uneven, and sometimes slippery like soft glass. Strange humming sounds came from beneath the surface. Occasionally, lights flashed from below, making it feel as though something alive moved under their feet. The group stayed close together. As they advanced, the mist grew thicker. Rena's jet boosters began to glitch, making small sparks. She cursed quietly. My boosters are useless in this field, Mira said calmly. Then walk. Slow steps. Breathe evenly. Drav rolled his eyes, but followed. You sound like an old instructor, Mira replied. Maybe that is what helps. After a long walk, the mist cleared for a short stretch, revealing a steep ridge. Beyond it, they could see fragments of floating structures, broken platforms hanging in midair, slowly rotating. They would have to cross them to reach the beacon. Yarrow looked nervous. The field shifts. We could fall. Myra studied the motion. It moves in a pattern. We wait for the right timing and move one by one. Drav laughed. We do not have to wait. My armor has jump boosters. He activated them and leaped ahead. At first it looked like a success, but halfway across his boosters failed midair. He crashed onto one of the floating rocks and barely held on. Rena shouted, Drav, hold tight. Mira knelt, scanning the air. There are magnetic surges. The boosters cannot work here. We need another way. She took the rope from her belt, tied one end around a rock, and threw it carefully toward Drav. The line reached him. Use the rope, she said. Dr. Ab hesitated but obeyed. With help from the group, he climbed back safely. His face was red with embarrassment. Fine, he muttered. Your old tricks work. He crossed the ridge using ropes, balance, and patience. Mira guided them step by step, reading the wind and timing the movement of the floating platforms. When they reached solid ground again, everyone looked exhausted but relieved. Rena looked at Mira with new respect. How did you know the timing? Mira smiled. We used to climb cliffs on Earth. The rocks there do not wait for machines. You learn to feel movement, not just measure it. Corin nodded slowly. Maybe your planet teaches useful things after all. They continued walking through the strange terrain. Hours passed, and they faced shifting lights, sound illusions, and sudden drops. Each time something went wrong, Mira stayed calm. She found simple solutions using the environment. When their scanners failed to detect direction, she used the stars above the mist to orient the team. When their energy supplies ran low, she found natural crystal formations that stored static power and used them to recharge small devices. Little by little, the group stopped mocking her. They began to ask for her advice. Drav, once loud and proud, now followed her directions without argument. Finally, they reached a wide valley covered with thin mist. In the distance, the central beacon shone brighter, calling to them. But something about the valley seemed wrong. The air was still, and no sound came from it. Mira raised her hand. "Wait," she said. Lynn asked softly. "What is it?" Mira studied the ground. The mist moved in strange circles. "There might be a field trap. We should test it." She picked up a small rock and threw it forward. The moment it crossed the circle of mist, the rock vanished. A second later, a spark of light appeared in the air. It was an energy field. Dr. Ab exhaled in surprise. "If we had walked in, we would have been stuck." Mira nodded. "We go around." They spent another hour finding a safe path through the valley. When they finally stepped onto the clear side, the beacon was just a short distance away. The team rested, tired, but proud. Rena looked at Mira. "Without you, we would have failed by now." Mira smiled faintly. "We are a team. That is what matters." As they sat together, the soft hum of the beacon filled the air. They could almost see the end of the test. None of them noticed the sky above beginning to shift. The colors darkened. The light above the nebula arena changed from soft blue to deep orange. It was the signal that the next stage of the simulation had started. Inside the mist, the ground began to tremble, and the air thickened. Mira stood with her team at the edge of the glowing valley. Watching the ground pulse with energy under their feet, they had already been inside for nearly 4 hours. Their bodies were tired, but their minds stayed sharp. The beacon they needed to reach stood only a few hundred meters ahead, shining through the fog like a star. It looked so close, yet every time they tried to move toward it, the ground shifted again. Forcing them to change direction, Dr. Ab wiped sweat from his forehead. "It keeps moving." "This arena is not fair," he said. Mira replied calmly. "It is not supposed to be fair. It is supposed to test how we react." Rena frowned as her wrist scanner flashed with static. "Everything is jammed again. We cannot track the beacon properly." Mira looked up at the thin lights drifting through the fog. "Then we use our eyes, not the screens. Watch the pattern of the lights. They move with the wind. The beacon is in the same direction as the wind flow." Corin looked uncertain, but followed her gaze. After a few moments, he nodded. "She is right. The mist is moving slightly east." They started walking again, following the flow of the air. The ground below them cracked open in small lines, releasing short bursts of white steam. Every step sounded like the planet was breathing. Lynn adjusted his helmet nervously. "It feels alive here." "It is only a simulation," Mira said. "It wants us to believe otherwise. That is how it confuses the mind." They reached a slope filled with crystal spikes. The sharp structures rose from the ground like frozen trees, glowing faint blue. Between them, narrow paths wound toward the next open area. Drav walked ahead, brushing one of the crystals with his armored hand. A spark of light flashed, and his suit gave off a short alarm. He stepped back quickly. The crystals carry static energy. Touching them charges the armor systems. Mira studied the glow. "Then we stay close, but do not touch them directly. The energy might help us later." They moved carefully between the crystals. The air was cool and silent, and for a few minutes, no one spoke. The quiet made every breath louder, every movement sharper. Then, suddenly, a low vibration spread through the ground. The crystals began to hum, their glow changing from blue to red. Rena shouted, "Something is activating. The system is changing the environment again." Mira raised her hand. "Stay together. Do not run. Move to the clearing." The hum grew stronger until the crystals released bursts of red light. Waves of magnetic force pushed through the air, throwing dust and mist in every direction. The cadets shielded their faces, but Mira stayed focused. She could see the rhythm of the pulses one every 5 seconds. Between the pulses, there was calm. "Follow my count," she said. "Move when I say." They moved when the light dimmed, stepping between the glowing spikes in perfect timing. When the crystals flared again, they froze and covered their faces. Each time, they advanced a little more until they reached the edge of the field safely. When they finally stepped out of the red glow, everyone sighed in relief. Drav sat down heavily. "How did you even notice the pattern?" Mira answered. "Earth has lightning storms that move in rhythm. You learn to listen for the space between strikes. The space is where you survive."
Ow.
Rena smiled tiredly. "Maybe we should all train on Earth." They rested for a short while, sharing the last of their energy packs. Lin checked the small manual compass Myra had given him. "The beacon is still in the same direction," he said. Myra stood and stretched her arms. "Then we move." The mist began to change color again as they walked. It turned from orange to gray, and small sparks floated in the air. The temperature dropped sharply, and frost formed on their armor. Soon they entered a frozen field covered in ice sheets. The air was cold enough to sting their lungs. Corin's voice trembled. "Our suits were not built for this temperature." "Keep moving," Mira said. "Movement keeps the body warm." Strav's heavy armor made it difficult to walk. Each step cracked the thin ice under his feet. After a few meters, he slipped and fell. The sound echoed through the still air, and cracks spread across the ground. "Stop moving," Mira ordered quickly. Everyone froze. The cracks spread in thin lines, glowing faint blue. Then a piece of ice broke off and fell into a deep pit below. The field was hollow. Rena looked down nervously. "We cannot walk here. The surface will break." Mira looked at the formation of the cracks and pointed toward the left. "There, the ice is thicker near the edge. Stay low and crawl. Distribute your weight." They followed her lead, crawling slowly across the field. The ice creaked under them, but it held. When they reached solid ground again, they stood up, breathing heavily. Drav looked embarrassed again. "You keep saving us," he said quietly. Mira gave a small smile. "I am saving the team, not just you." As they continued forward, the ground began to rise again, forming rocky slopes. The mist thinned, and in the distance, the beacon shone brighter. They were close now. But just as hope returned, a loud alarm echoed through the arena. The ground shook violently. From the mist ahead, mechanical shapes began to appear, tall drones with glowing red eyes and long-jointed limbs. They looked like metallic insects, Corin gasped. "Enemy drones. The arena has released combat units." Rena aimed her wrist cannon, but the weapon flickered. Power failure again. Drav tried his shoulder launcher, but it too was dead. "Nothing works." Mira's eyes scanned the field. The drones moved slowly, sweeping the ground with red light beams. "They react to motion and sound," she said. "Stay low and move only when the light turns away." The team crouched behind rocks as the drones advanced. The hum of their engines filled the air. Mira watched the pattern carefully. The drones turned their heads in rhythm, scanning in circles. She counted silently. 1, 2, 3, turn. "Now," she whispered. They moved quietly from one rock to another. When the drones turned back, they froze. The red light passed just inches above their helmets. The tension was heavy, but Myra stayed calm. Her breathing even. They repeated the movement again and again until they reached a cluster of metal debris. Mira looked at the broken parts and began to gather a few small pieces. "We can use these," she said. Drav frowned. "Use them for what?" She placed the pieces in a small pile and adjusted the angle of one reflective plate. "For distraction." When the drones turned their heads again, she threw a piece of metal far to the right. It clattered loudly. Instantly, all 3 drones moved toward the sound. The red lights shifted in that direction, leaving the path ahead clear. "Go," Mira said. They ran forward, staying low until they reached another ridge. From there, they could see the final stretch to the beacon. Rena looked back at the drones. That was clever. Simple, but clever. Mira said, simple is what saves you when nothing else works. They descended the ridge and entered the last zone. The beacon's light filled the air with a gentle hum. But as they approached, a wall of transparent energy appeared in front of them. It pulsed slowly, blocking the path. Lynn examined it carefully. A final barrier. It needs a power signal to deactivate. Rena checked her wrist panel. All systems are drained. We cannot activate anything. Mira looked back toward the crystal field they had crossed earlier. Those crystals hold static energy. If we can carry some of that charge here, we might open the path. Drav groaned. That is far back, Mira said. Then we go together. They returned to the crystal field, moving carefully through the mist. Mira broke off a few small crystals using a rock and wrapped them in fabric to reduce the discharge. The moment she touched them, her suit sensors flickered back to life. It works, she said. The crystals store enough power. They carried the crystals back to the barrier and placed them in a circle on the ground. Mira connected the pieces using metal wires from her toolkit. She adjusted the alignment until the energy from the crystals flowed evenly toward the barrier. Lynn watched in amazement. You built a conductor line without tools, Myra smiled slightly. Earth training teaches you to use what is around you. The energy from the crystals pulsed through the wires and touched the barrier. The transparent wall shimmered, flickered, and then dissolved. The path to the beacon opened. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Drav said, You did it. Mira nodded. We all did. They walked together toward the beacon. The light grew stronger until it surrounded them completely. The moment they touched it, the entire arena turned white. The mist, the cold, the drones, and the shaking ground all disappeared. A calm voice spoke from above. Simulation complete. Group 9 has reached the objective. He stood still, breathing hard but smiling. The world around them shifted back to the clean metal of the Academy chamber. The test was over. Rena looked around and laughed softly. We actually finished it. Rav turned to Mira, his tone humble now. You were right about everything. I thought your old training was foolish. I was wrong, Mira replied. You learned fast. That is what matters. The chamber door opened, and Commander Tovin entered. Congratulations, Group 9. You completed the simulation faster than any other team. The group stared in surprise. Tovin continued, most teams failed when systems crashed. Yours adapted. General Rether wants to speak with you. He led them to the observation room. General Rethor stood there, arms crossed, watching the display screens. When he saw them, he smiled slightly. The next morning, the academy was alive with movement. Cadets hurried across the training yards, preparing for their next simulation. Word of Group 9's success had spread quickly, and many cadets whispered about the human. Mira, some were curious, others were still skeptical. But all eyes followed her as she walked calmly across the field. Drav, who had once mocked her, now walked beside her in quiet respect. Rena and Corin did the same. The others in the team, Lynn and Yarrow, mirrored her calmness and focus. Their movements were coordinated without needing orders. They had become a unit guided by Mira's quiet leadership. Commander Tovin met them at the entrance to the simulation zone. Today's test will be more difficult, he said. You will face multiple obstacles that change every few minutes. Only teamwork and strategy will allow you to succeed. Mira nodded. She did not need to hear more. Every experience in the arena had taught her that rules were guidelines, not guarantees. Success came to those who stayed alert, observed carefully, and adapted quickly as they entered the simulation chamber. The floor beneath them hummed and disappeared into a swirling field of light. The room transformed into a large canyon with floating rocks, streams of bright energy, and sudden gaps in the ground. The environment was unpredictable, and every cadet instinctively reached for their equipment. But before anyone could activate their devices, the lights in their suits flickered and shut down. Drav gritted his teeth. Not again, he muttered. Mira stepped forward calmly. Then we rely on ourselves. Observe, move carefully, and watch each other. The canyon was wide, and treacherous. Floating rocks drifted in the air like islands in a river. Energy streams pulsed unpredictably, creating zones where stepping could trigger alarms or blockages. Mist rose from the ground, hiding the next safe path. Mira scanned the scene and pointed. We cross one platform at a time. Lynn, stay on my left. Yarrow, stay on my right. Drav, you watch behind. Rena and Corin followed the path carefully. They moved slowly, each step deliberate. Myra's instincts guided them across the floating rocks, reading the subtle shifts in light, weight, and vibration. Whenever a platform wobbled or energy pulsed, she paused, waited for the right timing, and moved again. The team followed her without hesitation, trusting her judgment. Halfway across the canyon, a sudden tremor caused one floating rock to shift violently. Rena nearly slipped, but Mira reached her hand instantly and steadied her. "Thank you," Rena said softly, surprised at how fast Mira reacted. Mira shook her head. "We watch each other. That is how we survive." Drav, who had been observing, finally spoke. "I never thought a human could think so quickly in chaos. You notice details we miss." Mira glanced at him calmly. "Earth teaches observation. We had to survive storms, wild terrain, and sudden danger without technology. That skill never leaves you." The team moved on, reaching the next obstacle, a narrow bridge suspended over a glowing chasm. The bridge shifted slightly with every step, and any mistake could send them tumbling. The cadets hesitated. Mira measured the distance and adjusted her stance, one at a time. "Focus on balance, and keep your eyes on the far side." Drav went first, his heavy armor making the bridge sway. He almost panicked, but he remembered Myra's calm guidance and took steady steps. Next, Mira crossed, followed by the others. Every movement required trust and patience. But the team successfully reached solid ground. They paused briefly, catching their breath. The beacon was visible now, just beyond a ridge. But Mira noticed something the others did not. "Look at the energy streams ahead," she said. "They are pulsing in cycles. If we move at the wrong moment, we will be blocked. Timing is crucial." Corin frowned. "We cannot calculate the pattern quickly enough." Mira nodded. "Then we rely on instinct. Watch the rhythm and trust your reaction." They moved forward, stepping carefully between the pulsing streams. Mira counted silently in her mind, predicting the cycle, and guided the team one by one. When the last member crossed safely, they were finally on the ridge leading to the beacon at the top. The view revealed a wide valley with a single glowing light at its center, the beacon. But the valley was not empty. Automated drones, similar to the ones in the previous simulation, hovered in the air. Scanning for movement, Rena whispered, "We cannot just walk in. They will detect us immediately." Mira surveyed the drones. "We will not confront them directly. We use the environment." She looked around and noticed a cluster of energy crystals embedded in the ground. Their glow matched the rhythm of the drone's scanning pulses. "We can use these crystals to create reflections and distractions," she explained. Drav raised an eyebrow. "You mean trick them with light?" Mira nodded. "Yes. Simple physics. They are programmed to react to movement and energy. We can guide their attention away from us." Working together, the team arranged the crystals in a small line, angled to reflect light toward the drones. When the first beam shone, the drones turned instinctively, following the light rather than noticing the cadets. "Move quickly," Mira whispered. They advanced across the valley, low and steady. The drone's attention stayed on the reflected lights, allowing the team to reach the base of the beacon without being detected. Once there, final challenge appeared, a protective energy dome around the beacon. The dome was smooth and transparent, pulsing with bright light. Lynn examined it. "We cannot open it with our equipment. It needs a pulse to deactivate." Mira thought for a moment. Then she pointed toward the energy crystals they had used earlier. "We carry some of that energy to the base. The crystals store enough charge to trigger the dome." They carefully picked up a few small crystals and moved toward the dome. Mira guided them in placing the crystals in a circle. Using strips of metal she found on the ground, She connected the crystals to form a simple conductor. "Everyone step back," she said. The crystals pulsed with energy, and the dome began to shimmer. The pulse spread across its surface, and slowly, the barrier dissolved. The beacon was now accessible. The team stepped forward together. Mira reached out and touched the beacon. Its light enveloped them in a soft glow. The simulation ended. The chamber transformed back into the normal academy floor. Commander Tovin entered the room, smiling. "Congratulations, Group 9. You completed the simulation with speed and precision. No other team managed to reach the beacon in this condition." Drav turned to Mira. "I was wrong. Your methods are effective. You led us through every challenge." Myra shook her head. "We succeeded because we trusted each other. Teamwork is stronger than any technology," Rena added. "And sometimes simple solutions work better than complex ones." The team left the simulation chamber, proud and united. The other cadets looked at them with admiration. Whispers of respect replaced the laughter and mocking from earlier days. Mira had proven that humans were not weak. They were capable of thinking, adapting, and leading in ways no machine could replicate. Later, as they gathered in the common area, the general's voice came through the speakers. "Group 9 has demonstrated what I have always believed. Instinct, patience, and teamwork can overcome any obstacle. Let this lesson guide the academy from now on." Mira smiled quietly, thinking about her home world, Earth. Humans had survived countless challenges with limited tools. That resilience had carried her here. She realized that the same qualities her ancestors had relied on: observation, patience, and adaptation had allowed her team to succeed where others failed. Drav, still standing beside her, finally said, "I understand now. Strength is not only about power or machines, it is about focus, observation, and trust." Mira nodded. "Exactly. And the best teams are the ones who move as one, learning from each other." The sun set over the academy, casting a warm glow on the towers. Cadets returned to their quarters, carrying lessons learned through experience. Mira walked calmly among them, her presence quiet yet commanding respect. That night, she stood on her balcony looking at the stars. The galaxy seemed vast and endless, filled with unknown worlds and challenges. But she knew one thing clearly: humans had a place among the stars. Not because of technology or strength alone, but because of the mind, the spirit, and the will to adapt. As the lights of the academy dimmed and silence returned, Mira whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, the next challenge comes. We will be ready." And far above, in the observation deck, General Rether watched with satisfaction. The human cadet had proven what he already knew. Instinct, patience, courage were the greatest tools any being could possess. The academy had witnessed a turning point. The human who was once mocked had now earned a position of respect, not by boasting, but by showing quiet determination and leadership. The other cadets would remember this day for the rest of their training. The academy woke to a new morning, brighter than the day before. The sun reflected off the silver towers, making the entire campus shine. Cadets moved quickly through the courtyards, discussing yesterday's simulation. Everyone had heard about Group 9's success, and Mira's name was on every lip. But the story was not about the machines, the drones, or the simulation itself. It was about the human cadet who had led her team calmly and carefully through challenges that had defeated others. Mira arrived at the training field before anyone else. She carried her standard pack and walked with purpose, her steps steady and quiet. Her team followed her, confident in her guidance. Even Drav, who had once mocked her, now matched her pace silently. Trusting her judgment, Commander Tovin met them near the arena. "General Rethor will address all cadets today," he said. "It will be a demonstration of leadership, strategy, and resilience." Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. This was not just a test of skill. It was an opportunity to show everyone what humans could do. She adjusted her belt, checked her equipment, and glanced at her team. They were ready. The other cadets gathered in rows on the observation terraces, whispering and pointing toward the team. Some were curious, others doubtful. but all waited for the demonstration. A loud chime sounded, and General Rethor appeared on the elevated platform. His calm presence silenced the entire assembly. "Cadets," he said, "today you will observe an exercise that demonstrates how leadership, teamwork, and instinct are as vital as technology. Watch closely, for there are lessons here for every one of you." He stepped aside, and the training doors opened. The arena was vast and multi-leveled, with shifting platforms, floating energy streams, and unpredictable terrain. The other cadets held their breath as Group 9 entered. Druv, Arena Korin, Lin, Yarrow, and Mira moved together, immediately assessing the environment. The arena pulsed with light and energy, testing their perception and focus. The floating platforms swayed, energy streams flashed unpredictably, and mist obscured some areas. It was a more complex version of the previous simulation. Mira stopped and raised her hand slightly, signaling the team to pause. Her eyes scanned the arena, noting subtle patterns in the energy pulses, shifts in the platforms, and the safest paths across. "This is not just about speed," she whispered to her team. "We move carefully. Watch for patterns. Observe and react." The team nodded and moved forward. Each step was deliberate, each decision calculated. When a platform began to tilt, Mira held out her hand and guided Korin to the stable section. When energy streams pulsed unexpectedly, she led Drav and the others to timing their moves perfectly. The other cadets watched in awe. Every movement was precise, coordinated, and effective. There was no hesitation, no confusion. The human cadet moved like someone who had lived through real challenges, not just simulations. A section of the arena suddenly dropped a narrow bridge over a glowing chasm. Mira studied it carefully. One at a time, focus on balance and rhythm. Trust the bridge in your body. Shh. Drav went first, cautious now. He placed each foot carefully and crossed without incident. Mira followed, her steps steady and confident. Rena and Korin followed behind, guided silently by her signals. Lin and Yarrow completed the crossing, their movements in perfect sync, at the far side. A series of floating platforms rotated slowly. Each was small and unstable, requiring both agility and patience. Mira analyzed the rhythm and pointed to the first platform. "Step lightly. Wait for the rotation. One at a time. No rushing." The team followed her guidance, crossing each platform with precision. Sparks of energy from the streams below did not disturb them. Mist and shifting lights created illusions of danger. But Mira's calm assessment kept the team focused. Halfway through the floating platforms, one platform began to tilt too sharply. Drav nearly lost his balance, but Mira extended her hand and steadied him. "Focus. Trust your body," she whispered. They crossed the remaining platforms successfully and reached the next obstacle, a protective energy dome surrounding a glowing beacon. This time, it was more advanced, with energy pulsing faster and randomly changing colors. The dome reacted to motion, sound, and even heat from the cadets' bodies. Lin whispered nervously, "We cannot just touch it. The energy will block us." Mira scanned the arena and noticed several reflective crystals embedded in the nearby walls. "We use the crystals to guide the energy away. Distract the dome, and the path will open." The team quickly arranged the crystals. Myra positioned one perfectly to catch the dome's pulse and reflect it toward the wall. The team followed her lead, creating a network of reflections that diverted the energy field. The dome shimmered and then dissolved, revealing the beacon at its center. Mira nodded to her team. "Step forward together." They moved as a unit and touched the beacon. Instantly, the arena lights shifted and the simulation ended. The floor transformed back into the standard academy environment. The other cadets erupted into applause. Even those who had once mocked Mira now cheered her name. They had witnessed a human leading a team through an environment far beyond anything most of them could manage alone. General Rethor stepped forward, his eyes bright. "Group 9 has demonstrated exactly what I hoped to see. Instinct, observation, teamwork, and calm judgment under pressure are as important as technology. This cadet has shown that leadership is not defined by size, species, or equipment. It is defined by the mind and the will to guide others. He paused, looking at Mira. You have earned respect not by boasting or showing off, but by your skill, calm, and quiet leadership. The other cadets should learn from this example. Mira felt a warm glow inside. She had not sought recognition. Her goal was simply to guide her team and complete the challenge. Yet the acknowledgement from the general was a validation of everything humans had learned over generations: endurance, adaptation, and teamwork. Drav stepped beside her. I was wrong about humans, he admitted. I thought strength and technology were everything. You've shown me what true capability is, Rena added. And it's not just strength. It's awareness, calm, and patience. You've led us in ways no machine could, Mira smiled. We all worked together. That is why we succeeded. Yarrow and Lynn nodded in agreement, proud to have been part of the team. The unity of the group was stronger than any doubt, stronger than any fear, stronger than any mockery they had faced before. The cadets, who had watched from the terraces, began to approach them. Some asked questions about how they managed the floating platforms. Others wanted to know how Mira had observed the energy patterns so quickly. Mira answered calmly, explaining simple principles: observation, patience, timing, and trust in oneself and the team. She did not boast. She did not claim superiority. She shared knowledge. One young cadet approached and asked, "How did you stay so calm while everything around you was shifting?" Mira thought for a moment. You focus on what you can control. You watch, you learn, and you move carefully. Panic wastes energy and makes mistakes. Calmness helps you see what others miss. The cadet nodded, understanding immediately. Myra's words were simple, yet powerful. General Reether stepped forward again. Take this lesson beyond the academy, he said. Machines and technology are tools, but your mind and your choices define success. Cadet Mira has shown what humans can do when they trust themselves and each other. That example should guide you all in your training and in the galaxy beyond. Myra's team felt proud, but she remained humble. She knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges far beyond simulations. They would face unknown worlds, strange phenomena, and situations where no training or technology could predict the outcome. But she also knew that humans had survived countless challenges on Earth by relying on their mind, their body, and their will. Later that evening, Mira stood on the balcony of her dormitory. The twin suns of Terran dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the academy. She looked at the stars above, shining like distant beacons. Her thoughts returned to Earth, to the people who had taught her resilience and observation. To the endless skies where humans had once dreamed of reaching the stars. Drav joined her silently. You changed my perspective, he said quietly. I see now that every species has strengths. Humans have something special. Mira nodded. We all have something special. We just need to learn to see it in each other and in ourselves. Rena came next, placing her hand on the railing beside Mira. Your team will be remembered. Not because you are human, but because you led us wisely and safely. That is what